After a decade or so working in Westminster, I've got to say to you, there is very little that happens in British politics these days that shocks me. But every now and then, something does happen, or someone says something that even after all this time is so unusual or so extreme that it does shock me. It happens rarely, but on certain days it does. And today, I'll tell you, was absolutely one of those days. Because today is the day when the deputy chairman of the governing party, the Conservative Party, felt it absolutely appropriate to tell a newspaper that in his view, if asylum seekers in this country, people seeking haven in our nation, don't like the accommodation being provided to them, then they should, and I'm not going to say the word in full for obvious reasons, but they should F off. That is the phrase that he used. And yes, despite all the rhetoric we've heard in recent months when it comes to asylum seekers, despite the state of the debate in our country when it comes to refugees, that was so extreme, so brazen, so blunt and crude and offensive that it shocked me nonetheless. And especially coming from a senior politician, the deputy chair of the Conservative Party. It shocked me because the truth is that even far-right politicians, even the leaders across the world of far-right political parties don't put it that crudely. Even Marine Le Pen or Donald Trump or the others of their ilk, I don't think would say it in those terms. So it seems to me that we have reached in this country, when it comes to talking about asylum seekers, a depressing new low. That the country that for centuries offered safe haven to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these people, from those fleeing the French Revolution, to those escaping Nazi Germany, to the victims of Idi Amin and Pol Pot, the country of the Kindertransport has now become the country where senior politicians tell refugees and those seeking asylum to F off. There's just no way of sugarcoating this, I'm afraid. There's no beating about the bush. What we have seen today is the deputy chairman of a political party, the governing party in this country, co-opting and adopting the language that pound shop racists have used for decades. The language of the pub or pavement bigot being expressed by a senior politician in this country. You might think he's out on a limb here. You might think he is just an extreme example and we should take no notice. You would, I'm afraid, be wrong. Because it now seems that this is not just the language of Lee Anderson, but also the language of the Conservative Party, or at least some senior figures within it. And it's not just offensive. It's not just disturbing. I think it's actively dangerous, because how many people of colour in this country have an experience of being told to F off somewhere else, of being told to go back to where they came from? If you said it to someone in the street, you would be arrested and quite possibly charged with a criminal offence. But if you're a Tory MP, not only do you get away with it, but you also have many of your colleagues leaping to your defence.
Yeah, I think that, Ben, you want to get out of that ivory tower of yours and get around and start talking to people in public houses and in high streets, I mean, he's speaking for a lot of people in this country, millions of people, because I tell you why. We've got a housing crisis, Ben. We've got a cost of living crisis. We've got young adults living with their parents that can't afford to get out and rent properties.
And whose fault's that, Kevin?
Or buy properties. Hang on a minute. Can I finish, please?
No, who are you blaming for this?
Honestly, this guy's put his head above the parapet and he's saying what plenty of people are thinking in this country and saying. Now, Ben, you get around talking to people, you'll be laughed at. We've all had enough of the pussyfooting around.
What do you think my job is if it's not to speak to people around the country?
Sorry?
What do you think I do sitting here day after day if it's not speaking to people around the country?
I don't think you do much at all, Ben. I think, how many viewers have you got? Do you think you speak for London, let alone this country?
Kevin,
how many listeners have you got?
Kevin, who do you speak for?
Who do I speak for?
You're speaking for yourself, sir, aren't you? And that's fine, but you're not speaking for anyone else necessarily.
No, I speak for everybody I speak to.
You speak for everybody. You speak to the whole country.
The next election will be won on this point, Ben. You live in cuckoo land,
right.
Ben. Let
me go back to the point, Kevin. Let me go back to the point you were making. You say we've got a housing crisis. Who's more responsible for the fact we've got a housing crisis in your view? The bloke who's deputy chairman of the party that's been in power for 13 years, or some migrants on a barge in Dorset?
Right, Ben, we've got a housing crisis because we're overpopulated. Do you not understand that?
Do you think it's also because we haven't built enough homes,
We've got
Kevin?
1 million people, Ben. We've got 1 million people approximately coming to this country every year.
Huh?
You know, the city... There's 650 to 750 to possibly 1 million.
And what
people
proportion
coming
of
to this
those
country
are
a
coming
year.
on small
Now,
boats,
let me tell you,
Kevin?
Ben, we've got a population.
It's a small
crisis.
fraction, isn't it?
Do you know we haven't got a stock, Ben? Do you know, have you ever heard of housing stock?
Yeah, we haven't
got
built
it,
much
Ben.
of it, have
Do you
we?
understand that? We haven't built much.
Yeah.
Well,
Whose fault's that, Kevin?
We need to build 1 million. We need to build 1 million houses a
Kevin,
year.
you haven't answered my question. Whose fault is it that we've not got enough homes for the people of this country?
Smart guy. So it's Tory, is it? Tell me how many houses Labour built in the last
Yeah,
year when
it's
they were
the
last in power.
politicians. You're right. They didn't build enough either. It's the politicians, isn't it, that are at fault for us not building enough homes. It's not the people coming over here claiming asylum.
We can't. The country's not. We haven't got the housing stock, Ben. Do you not understand that? Well, none of you understand that. It's simple.
Kevin,
we
that's
haven't
why I'm
got the
saying we
housing
need.
stock.
That's why I'm
So
saying we need to
therefore,
build
Ben,
more.
If we have to put these poor people in a barge until we can sort something out,
Yeah.
they should be grateful for it. Grateful, Ben.
So
Grateful is the word.
however we treat them, they should just be grateful because they're here. Is that the point?
What do you mean? However we treat
What,
them,
no,
they're
what-
getting health.
Where
looked
do you draw
after.
the line,
They're getting
Kevin?
Food.
If they start being abused in the street, do we just say, oh, well, they should just be grateful they're here at all?
No, I'm not talking about abuse in the street. I'm talking about they're getting health. They're getting food. They're getting
Oh, they're
accommodation.
getting
They're getting
food.
warmth.
Wow, they should be grateful. We're giving them... When did the bar
Hang
get
on,
so
Ben,
low,
hang on,
Kevin?
Ben, hang on. Do you know people are going to food banks in this country?
Kevin,
Come on, Ben.
we've
wake up and smell
gone
the coffee.
in less than a century from the country of the kinder transport to the country where we should be telling people they're grateful they're getting
The
food.
kinder transport, Ben. The kinder transport was mainly a Jewish people.
Kevin,
that
I know
brought
what
the
I know
Jews
what
over.
I know what the
and
kinder
I don't have a
transport
problem
was.
with any of that, Ben.
That's
I don't
good
have a
to
problem
know,
with it.
Kevin. I've got to leave it there because we're out of time. But thank you for your call. That was Kevin in Oxford.